Hey there everybody, this is the Dusk Alchemist from Dusk Gaming Entertainment, and today I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick review of The Last of Us Remastered Edition. Last of Us Remastered does a lot of things right, all the way throughout the game. A lot of people go ahead and criticize the game for being all story and no gameplay, but I actually found that the gameplay itself had a lot of things going for it, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and start with it. Now, some people classify this game as a survival horror, when it's really not. If it wanted to be, they probably could have made it survival horror, just considering the zombie-like nature of all the enemies that run around in the game. However, because they look at it from a much more realistic point of view, that and the fact that they chose third person rather than first person usually delve into the character more, which makes them much better for horror scenario, but they wanted to tell a story rather than put you in the shoes of it, which it's been applauded mostly for its storyline, but that's not what I'm talking about, I'll get to that later, is that it has really nice gameplay in the sense that it focuses on the survival aspect. I played the game on normal mode the first time through, and it was a lot more difficult than I thought it was. I was constantly going here and there and there and everywhere, looking for as much materials as I could to craft items that would help me in a fight, because each little item you get can equal a much better crafted item. And by doing so, that one little item made a difference in a confrontation in a fight. Example, if I go ahead and I search in that corner all the way over there, hiding in the shadows, and I find a bottle of booze, I can't do anything with just that. But if I go into another room, and say it's a laundry room, and I go ahead and I find some rags, I can craft those together to make a Molotov cocktail. And those basically completely decimate an entire horde of infected in the game. It goes ahead and leaves, it has an AoE effect in the sense that it's both a bomb and it leaves the fire there afterwards, so if an infected come running through, they're still dead. It's a one-hit kill for them. If they get lit on fire, they're dead. So the game captures the survival aspect of it in the fact that there's not that many resources going around. And when I played it on an even higher difficulty, I went through it on a survivor difficulty, which unless you get the remastered edition, which comes with all the DLC, it's the grounded mode is the hardest, but originally survivor edition was the hardest difficulty. And so basically I maxed out one of my resources throughout the entire game, and the only reason that was because I refused to use it because I was so afraid I would get into a fight and I would need to use everything that I had. So I was very clingy, I was being extra cautious, and it's supposed to be a stealth game, and it sells that really well. It has a really nice combination of what they did great with Uncharted. They went a little bit of a different direction. They didn't want it to be this gigantic pew 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 fest. They didn't want it to go ahead and be all about the gunfire and that. They wanted to go ahead and put you in the shoes of someone who's trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world that has very limited resources. And if you play on the higher difficulties, you really do get that. Even on the low difficulties, you start getting that because you're gonna start blowing through your stuff, and then when it matters, you might not have any Molotovs left, you might not have any bandages, you might not have any ammo, period. You might have to go from being... because whenever you have your items, you feel safe. That if you run into an enemy, you can go ahead and use them to dispatch it. But on the other hand, if you don't have any items, you will be sneaking around everything the best you can. You will ignore everything you can. You might not be able to take the risks to go searching because you might not be able to deal with whatever you find when you go searching for something. And it just sells that wonderfully. Now, It got hit for not having, like, really good gunplay, but it had some really basic gameplay concepts in it. You could go ahead and you could take an opponent hostage. You could hold them by their neck and use them as a hostage situation. Go ahead, use them both as a human shield, and it dissuaded enemies from firing back at you, which is really good. There wasn't that really many enemy distinctions, but considering the type of game it was, I don't think it really needed that. You had the several different types of infected, some of which don't even show up that much, but that is some of the flaws in the game. The fact that there is one particular type of infected called clickers, and they were basically one-hit kills, and they would just completely decimate you if you ran into one. So you never wanted to run into one. Ever. Period. Zip. Because if you got close to them, and you had a full bar of health, and you had maxed out resources, and it touched you, you would be dead. The graphical world of Last of Us is downright phenomenal. I'm not sure how well it looked for the previous edition of the game on PlayStation 3, but I know for the Remastered edition on PlayStation 4, even among the other games that were made solely for PlayStation 4, graphically it was beautiful. It was amazing. The water in the game was phenomenal. The lighting, the textures, everything was done to perfection. So Naughty Dog has done a really good job establishing that. The world feels real, even though it's a linear storyline. The cityscape is humongous. The views are realistic. The game is almost everybody's favorite part about the game, which would be the wonderfully crafted storyline told specifically around its dual protagonist, which really focuses on the game's strength. A few games have done that recently, actually. In the main dual antagonists, you had Last of Us, you had Bioshock Infinite, and you had The Walking Dead. And it really works in the sense that you're not just this one person, and especially if it's not a game that you have to be the main character in, when you're not projecting yourself onto the main character, that you're just watching it happen and you're playing as them. It works that way since you don't feel like you're any particular person. I mean, you're obviously going to probably gravitate more to Joel, but you end up playing as both of these characters at some point. And you guys get separated at times, and you start feeling that these people are individuals in this universe that are just thrown together by fate, and it just feels so real. Obviously I can't go into specifics with the story without spoilers, but I will say that it is wonderfully crafted, and the ending leaves you so conflicted because I'm gonna tell you, you're probably gonna be rooting for the main character no matter what's going on, but some of the stuff gets questionable towards the end, and the emotional impact that hits you about the stuff that happens leaves you almost unsure of how you feel about it. Then the very last line in the game does that even further, and it leaves you thinking about the game even after the story itself is ended, even after you set the controller down, even after you take the game disc out. You're probably going to be thinking about it for a little bit and wondering why the characters did what they did. Heck, I'm still thinking about why they did what they did. And it really hits you. It's just, the characters are wonderful, they're relatable, they're realistic. The voice actors are obviously phenomenal. I mean, Troy Baker's Troy Baker. He does a lot of great stuff. I can't remember the voice actress for Ellie, but she did a wonderful job too. Just all around, the game was sculpted to... It was just a really wonderful game, which leaves you to watch. Chances are you've probably either played the game yourself, or you've seen a bunch of other reviews, or you're just wasting your time watching a really bad YouTube channel on YouTube. But I'm gonna go ahead and point out the main flaws at the end of this, and obviously all the main things it did right. It has a wonderful storyline with a killer conflicting ending. It does a really good job. There's almost no faults there. The only problems I could say is that some of the characters seem a bit underwhelming. They show up and they just don't really seem to have much to do, but that also makes it seem realistic, because you're sitting here wondering if these guys are going to show up again, and realistically, that just you're going across country in this game, so I mean, the idea that this person from that state will go over here, I mean, why would they, right? Though that also points out that there's a few things that the enemy factions in the game do that don't make as much sense. Everyone seems to hold grudges and they will follow you. And they will just be... Enemies are unrelenting storyline-wise, not gameplay-wise. But as far as the story goes, they do not give up. And it just doesn't really make that much sense, so there's sort of a flaw in the story there. So the game story is not without flaws, but it's still amazing. The multiplayer, I actually didn't get talking about the multiplayer yet. I kept forgetting that the game had multiplayer. It captures the survival mode of the story almost perfectly. You go ahead and you start on a 4-on-4 team match. And you go ahead, you have to kill enemies to gather resources, or you just have to scavenge resources yourself. And the more resources you gather, you can purchase and use better equipment that'll help you kill your enemies faster. And you have to go ahead and level up consistently, and during which there's a side in between each match. There's sort of another almost Facebook style minigame going on where you're managing your clan of people. You keep on getting more survivors, and depending on how much you scavenge in the game in each match and how much you have left over, depends how many of them you can feed. And it actually affects the way you play the multiplayer, because you might not be buying all those assault rifles because you want to save those resources and get them back to your pretend clan. It's kind of funny because if you use a Facebook feature, all the clan members are named after your Facebook friends. So you go ahead and be like, oh no, my mother is starving, I must feed her. So you're gonna go ahead into the next match, and unless you're a dick. And then you'll probably go ahead and focus more on scavenging than killing other people. And then you have the gameplay. The gameplay is probably the weakest part of the game, just in the main story mode. But it's definitely not a weakness in and of itself. It does a lot of stuff better than other games. It falls into the same problem that all stealth games have, which is a consistent trial and error loop. You go ahead, you die, try to figure out why you died again, try and figure out how you died and how you can go through the level without dying, and so on and so forth. There's a part in the game, I'm running around with a bunch of clickers, I have no bullets, I can't do anything, and I'm just trying to figure out how I get through this area without alerting anything, and it's a long thing. If I die, I go all the way back to the start. I'm 8 minutes in, and one of the NPCs jumps out and just attracts every infected to me. And I don't know how I survived. I ended up splitting off from the NPCs, and they distracted them, and since the NPCs sort of have a function where they can't be seen, that was it for them. They went ahead and just escaped as soon as I was out of sight, and I just had to wait for all the little enemies to float back to their original place before I could continue the story. But overall, the game is amazing. It has great story, very good gameplay, and surprisingly good multiplayer. So I go ahead and rate it a solid 9.7 out of 10, because, let's face it, there's no such thing as a 10 out of 10 game. But if there was, this would probably have to be it. Thank you for watching. If you actually watched the whole video, go ahead and please leave a like below, subscribe if you will. I know you don't really have to, but every time I see a subscription, it makes me a little bit happier, so go ahead, make my day.